So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think today we wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about the people import, in particular for your students, so they can eventually access the client portal to be able to submit some of these services that we're working on. So I'm in your TD admin, and in users and roles is this import jobs. And in the import jobs, it looks blank, but there's this awesome help text here that walks you through how to manually create the spreadsheet that you use for your import, right? And so these are the standard fields that you typically are going to create that Excel spreadsheet that you do out of on your own, essentially. And from here you pull in, and these would be the column headers that you would use and populate from the spreadsheet that you're manually creating, and essentially looking at your internal database where you pull some of these from. So the restriction, the import file header would be the column, and that's what you would name it. And if you wanted to import the account department for the user, it would already have to exist. So here's the description: as an account department. So for your students, an account department for them might be students, or might be academics, or whatever it might be. It's not a required field, but if you wanted to leverage it, it would be there.
And I think it would be helpful to, and just to say, just for the recording as well, I do think it would be helpful to use it, just because then doesn't it auto-populate when they go to submit a form? If it's
it does.
Present. Yeah.
You're exactly right.
So just less confusion for the student.
Absolutely right.
Cool.
Yeah, because then you're right. I'll come back to this page in a second. You are absolutely right. So it would, I'll just pull up Alejandro. It would auto-populate, or it would, right here, it will populate this value here when you do the import on the user record. So if Alejandro went in and created a service request, just like a student would, then it would auto-populate the account department on that request to application services.
Perfect. Yeah.
So on your students, if this were student services or academic student, whatever it might be, then it would auto-populate, and the student would not have to select a value. If it didn't auto-populate, then the student, it'll be a red asterisk, and the student would have to select from your drop-down of your accounts departments, which currently includes, and let's take a look at those real quick. This is your current list of accounts departments.
And I'm assuming we're going to want to build out our account departments first, make sure those are all set and ready to go before attempting to do the people import.
Yes, because these, if that's an important field for you, and it usually is, this list needs to be as complete as possible.
Looks like we have a student category, but right now we just put test in front of it. So we would want to modify that, correct? Yeah. We would want to modify and have that reflect exactly what we want.
All right, so let me go back to that spreadsheet there. Import jobs, help. Standard fields, so this would be your column headers on that Excel spreadsheet. You'll want to note which ones are required. Those are the red. And these are matching primarily to many of the things we saw on the user record, right? The Alejandro's user record. So things like, obviously like address and city, those things aren't required. But you have things in here, last name, organization, which is typically going to be your school name, time zone. So quite a few things on here that you want to think through. And then from, you don't have any custom attributes in here to worry about, so that's okay. Standard applications, now these are going to be things that primarily from a student user record, you're going to want only a few of these things. Here would be the import header of the ones you would want. Now, for For your students, most of these that are listed here require that the user record has TD Next access, and your students are not going to have TD Next access, so they won't have access to my work. So they're in this particular, in the standard applications, for your students, you won't need to list and populate the import file header of any of these. But if you were to import other users that need to have access to TD Next, then you would populate whichever ones that folks wanted to have access to here. Most of the time, the people that need TD Next access have either already been created here as part of your initial manual load. These are like your technician license, your enterprise, your admin folks, typically have already been set up, right? And you've given them the appropriate application access and security role. So your import primarily is importing students and or faculty members that only have client portal access. Does that make sense so far?
It does, but what happens if we already?
Okay.
What happens if we've already built them and they end up on a mass import? Let's say we want to import all of our students at once, but one of our students happens to also, I don't know, have a license for some reason, like a student worker or something.
It'll do a duplicate match.
Okay.
And it'll only update the fields that haven't been updated, essentially.
Perfect.
So the client portal application is what it's going to essentially look for your student records. It's going to look for, this would be the header for that. The ticketing applications, again, would be more of a TD Next item. So this would be the client portal application import file header that you would want to leverage. And we'd want to make sure that you have a client license. That's what you would assign your students and or faculty or staff that only access the client portal. So we can see right now you don't have any, and that's okay. And then you also have 44 that have enterprise license and 44 that have technician. So if I go back to my import folder, my import jobs help, this is a key article here. When I click on it, it's going to take me to this article here, which has a lot of good information in here. So what we just did, it says right here, for all versions after 10.3, and you guys are on, you can always see your version back on your homepage of TD Admin. You're on version 11.2. So refer to TD Admin users and roles import jobs help for help and usage details, right? Use that information in the page to either manually create a .xlsx import sheet based on those headers we talked about, or if you know how to do some sort of programmatical script on your end. There's a lot of detail in here that will talk you through some of those others and when what it will do, what it will not do. But at a high level, this visual aid here is a really nice one to walk us through what's happening. So what is happening? So eventually you guys are going, in these three blocks here, what we're going to talk through. So eventually you guys are going to query, or you're going to leverage where your data is, right? Wherever your people data is stored, you guys are going to query that in your house, right? From that source. And then the output is going to be that XLSX file. So you're going to populate that file based on the import helpful instructions for all of those folks that are going to have a client license. You're going to populate that file, and then you're going to drop that file into a secure directory of your choosing inside your infrastructure. That's this fourth bullet point, right? It's usually done on a nightly basis, but after you do it the first couple times, maybe people do this nightly or weekly, just depending on how often they want to do this to keep records up to date.
If I run into an issue where I need to submit some type of help request, is that here in the community portal as well? Like service tickets type
You
of
would reach
idea?
out to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You would reach out to me, and then I would reach out to either if I couldn't answer it or get an answer for you real quickly, I would connect us with our technical support team.
Got it. Okay.
So you download the utility from Team Dynamix, and this second box, the information for downloading the utility is back over here. I think I just opened up the same article that I had. I apologize. Here's the import utility. You guys are 11.2, so you're going to want to use the people import utility 3.0.1 over here. This one here. So that's that second block. Download the utility. It'll monitor the director that you specify for the file. It'll do 2 posts against the login and the bearer token. The second will send the file to the API endpoint. That's the second block. This is where a lot of the magic happens, as you're probably pretty well aware. The API endpoint will then get read, right? So receives the import files, stores them for batch processing. So you're going to want to do all of this first in the sandbox, just like you mentioned. The sandbox will import things probably in the middle of the day, and you can probably check it the same day, or it'll give you errors the same day, right? So sandbox, we allow our customers to do it a little bit, I don't want to say more frequently, but it's not going to interrupt anything during a business hours, right? When you run it, when you redo this and do it in production, it's going to wait until an overnight run job, which is usually like 4 a.m. So if you did it like right, if you try to do this and schedule it today, it would run overnight, and then tomorrow you'll be able to check the results. So just an FYI there. Sandbox, you could do it during the day, and you'll get the result probably in the same day.
Yeah.
Production, it'll go overnight.
Makes sense. Is there any flexibility on that time? Because as I'm sure you know, we have a lot that we're running every night. Does TDX work with us as far as time at all? Or is 4 a.m., for example, it?
It might be earlier than that. It might be 2 o'clock.
Okay.
But it's all done based on our schedule. Not a lot of flexibility, just because we want to prevent any sort of potential East Coast, West Coast production impact time frame.
Okay.
So you kind of asked this question earlier. When the endpoint receives a file, the record in question is brand new. It'll create the record. If it's a copy, it updates the previously created record. And then, of course, recommended import into Sandbox first and then production. So these two are key articles that support this process. And then you create your file here with the instructions from the import job help. So questions, thoughts, ideas?
Seems pretty straightforward. Looks like the KB has everything we need to get started. So it would just be a matter of reviewing that and attempting to download that tool and writing the script to pull that information from Banner.
Now let me just post this. You probably have this already about people import. So I'll send you the people import with these 2 articles attached to it and this recording so that you can refer back to. So give it a shot, and then circle back with me. Let me know how it's going. And like I said, if you have questions, just send them to me. I'll try to answer as quick as I can. And then if I can't get you answers quick, I'll connect us up and we can get on a technical support call with one of my smart guys, and we'll get your questions answered and get you rolling.